Hi, and welcome to Funding with Trust, the podcast for people looking to make more impact in international development. I'm Eva Mala. Recently, I traveled all the way to New York to attend the UN General Assembly, and I had the opportunity to speak with Willie Mpasuka, the Executive Director of Rays of Hope, an organization working on strengthening education systems in Malawi. I have known Willie since 2015, and I was so excited to catch up with him. Willie, welcome to Funding with Trust.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so glad to hold this conversation.
Yeah, and because we are recording here at Unga Week, first of all, how have you found the whole week and all the activities that are happening?
Quite overwhelming, to say the least, because I have so many meetings and conversations and sit through a lot of presentations, which is really good and added to my knowledge, but also grew my network. So it's good to be here. Very exciting.
Now, I remember the first time I met you was actually in 2015 in Malawi when I came to see your work. It feels like ages ago.
Wow, yeah.
But what is your journey and how did you end up starting Rays of Hope?
So the journey has been quite adventurous, to say the least. Maybe a bit of my background. I grew up in Malawi, born in Malawi, grew up in Malawi, in a fairly big family, 9 children. Of course, the other one was our cousin. I'm the 7th born, and my dad worked in the government. He didn't make a lot, so life was really terrible. And because of that, I created my own world, which did not like school, because nobody cared. I mean, you go to school in the morning, you come back not knowing if you're going to find food, and nobody asks you, what did you learn today? And because of that, I was a perpetual failure from first grade, maybe up until 8th grade. I don't know about you, but in our country, they rank students from the first to the last, and they have a cutoff point where you fail or you pass. But they had a certain group of kids who did not fail, they did not really pass, and they were writing on their school report card, may try. May you take him to the next grade to try out.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
I was that student. So from grade 3 to grade 4, it was may try. Grade 4 to grade 5, may try. It got so normal that my parents and my siblings, they knew Willie is gonna bring a may try card. Until in grade 9, a teacher spotted me for some reason, and he started tutoring me, speaking to me, building that foundation. And at the end of that term, my dad had stopped work. That time he went to live in the village. I lived with my brother in the city. He called me one day and said, Willie, I have your school report card, but I think they made a mistake. I said, what? I said, yeah, I think they made a mistake. I said, why? I said, well, you are number 1 in your class. I said, I am. He said, there is no way. There's no way you can be number 1, because my failure history was quite impeccable. But my turnaround point, my inflection point in my academic journey was that teacher tutoring me, building that foundation, and that changed really everything academically. And since then, I managed, the only one actually, who managed to go to university, and I had the privilege to even do graduate school in the States. So my journey, my academic journey has been quite telling, very adventurous.
That's really inspiring, Willie. And how do you then start Rays of Hope and the work that you're doing?
So, taking a leaf from my story, when I finished university, I thought, what should I be doing? And coincidentally as well, I got an opportunity to come to the States to intern with a certain organization in New Jersey.
And what were you studying in the US?
In the US, I studied a master's in international development, but that was way later on, before this time around. So I spent a year with this organization in New Jersey, and around that time, that's when we conceptualized to start Rays of Hope. And basically, Rays of Hope mirrors my story, where someone tutors somebody, and then you invest in the teachers so that they can be a better education for everybody. So the reason we started Rays of Hope was because there were so many students, so many children like Willie, who were written off by their teachers, who came from underserved communities, who were labeled as failures, yet they were not really failures. And for us, we wanted to be like that teacher. And I'm glad right now we are seeing a lot of Willies really rising the ladder of education success to become people that can actually do well in life.
And give us an idea of how many slow learners you're working with at the moment.
So right now we serve 1,500 students.
1,500?
Yes. 1,500 students across 12 primary schools right now in Blantyre City and Blantyre Rural.
And what results do you see from them after working with them for a period? I guess how long does it take to come from a slow learner to an A student?
Many of them, it actually takes a year. And the other ones, they could actually take 2 terms, which is like 6 months, or maybe a term. But we see rapid change from being labeled as a slow learner or a failure to someone who is top of the class. And I'll tell you a story. In 2012, that's when we started to see the first cohort taking the national standardized examinations. And in that year, all of our students were actually selected to go to specific secondary schools. Now, I don't know where you're from, but in my country, being selected to go to a secondary school is a big deal because not every kid who passes examinations can actually get into a public secondary school. So when we did that in 2012, the news spread and our program really grew because everybody wanted to have a chance to be selected into secondary school.
I love it. You've been around for more than a decade, and I'm just keen to understand how fundraising has gone for you over the years. How long did it take you to secure your first institutional funder?
Well, that's a very interesting subject as well. I mean, if you talk to every founder or startup person, they are going to tell you that fundraising is hard. And one of the reasons that not everybody is a founder. So my journey is not devoid of such surprises. It's full of them. The first institutional funder for Rays of Hope came in 2016. This is the Seagull Family Foundation.
That's how many years after you
That's
had
from
started?
when we started in 2009 to 2016. That's almost 7 years.
So how are you sustaining your operations that entire time?
We relied so much on individual donors from, of course, the US, individual donors in Malawi. We did some fundraisers in Malawi. We engaged the corporate. They donated a lot of resources for us to be running the programs, except that in the first 2 years, we had seed money from somebody. But after that one, it took like 7 years for us to get the first institutional funder.
You know, it's hard to believe some of these things, but I mean, it's real for you. It happened. And what were you hearing from funders that entire time? I know you'd approached a few, but why did it take so long for you to secure your first institutional funder?
So funders were given very different reasons. The first one was Malawi is just hard to fund. And they were citing like logistical challenges to say, to fly from Washington, D.C. into Lilongwe, Malawi's capital, is just so hard. Even just this week, I heard someone saying, well, to fly from Washington, D.C. into Nairobi and to fly from Washington, D.C. into Lilongwe, the trips are just so different. So that's the first reason they say it's so hard to get into Malawi because logistically it's hard.
But we're here in the US, so how did you fly from Lilongwe to the US? Was it very hard logistically?
I don't believe it was, because I flew from Lilongwe to Ethiopia, and Newark, New Jersey, and New Jersey is like 10 minutes away from New York. So it's not as really bad. I think, I don't know what they meant. Maybe logistics is a very subjective subject. Sure. So that's the first reason. The second reason why they were citing is because we are in education. And they say that it takes time for education to show results. So I heard that in the first years. I keep on hearing that. 2 years ago, I was in the UK at SCORE, and I met a funder, not just one, several funders, and I asked them why they don't fund Malawi. And they said, well, I mean, why they don't fund education? They're saying, well, education requires a lot of years to see impact. It doesn't just make a very convincing case for someone to invest in it. And I keep hearing that from funders to say education is hard. They said in my face that if you were in livelihood, if you were in health, if you were in agriculture, at the end of the 12 months, you're going to show me something as impact.
So if education is hard, what I'm hearing is that they're comfortable funding illiterate farmers?
Yes.
Does that make any sense?
It doesn't to me. Because, I mean, farmers that don't know how to read or write really require education. So it really doesn't make sense.
And looking at just the education space in Malawi, what does that look like? Where are the gaps? How many students are able to access quality education?
It's very, very broken. Our education system is broken. Just last week, we got the results of the grade 12 national standardized examinations, which when you pass, you go into public university. So the entire country, only over 50% where they passed the examinations, which means 40-something%, they do not have the high school diploma. That's just in secondary school. But in primary school, the numbers are also very, very disappointing because at the moment, less than 60% of enrolled students from grade 1 go to standard 8, go to grade 8. But out of those, let's just say 60%, only about 40% could make a jump into secondary school. And out of those, less than 6% can actually move on to tertiary education. So that's how broken the Malawian education system is.
And why is that? Is it because of severe, and it's severely underfunded by the government? What's the issue?
So there are many factors. One of it is resources in general. We just don't have enough resources. Or I should say the government says it doesn't have enough resources to support education. That's number one. Number two, in my opinion, I feel like our teacher education is not of high quality. And this goes back in 1994. As you know, there was a wave of universal primary school. So a lot of African countries, they started offering primary education for free. And how that was done in Malawi, for example, they just announced that at a political podium. And the next day, they have classes full of students. According to research, we moved from 1.8 million students to 3.2 million in one academic year. But they did this without addition of teachers, supplies, no infrastructures. And the government was like, oh, what did we do? So they started recruiting 10th grade graduate students, 12th grade graduate students, and start to put them in classes to become teachers, hoping that they're going to be training them while they are on school break. Now, you and me know that's not how you train a teacher. But those teachers have been in the system, and the teacher education system itself has also gone through a lot of changes over the past decades. So all that with the inadequate resources really make education not to be of that high quality, I must say.
Last year I was in Malawi actually, and I was visiting education organizations. To my surprise, I went to a school in the middle of Lilongwe, 9,500 students in that school. And from grade 1 to grade 7, there were no desks in the middle of the capital. So for me, it's one of the worst I've ever seen. And it breaks my heart to see that not many funders are focusing on this issue in Malawi. And how do we get them to focus on that? Funders are saying it's hard to, do business in Malawi. But from your perspective, is that true? And how can funders find it easy to navigate Malawi?
There must be a reason why they would say that's the reason. But for me, I may also not put a very strong argument in words. But for me, the first thing I would say is I want to invite funders. So if they've just read in a paper or see on the internet that Malawi is wrecked, Malawi is so hard to do business, the first thing I would want to invite funders is come to Malawi and just see what is in Malawi and make a business case when you come. Second, Malawi is neighboring Tanzania and neighbor Zambia. If you go to Zambia and Malawi, they look pretty much the same. So for me, I think it is not necessarily accurate to say it's so hard to do business in Malawi. But what I'm seeing is Malawi is tiny and definitely not many economic activities are happening in the country. So maybe that's not attractive in that way. But in terms of possibility to invest in Malawi, we have so many possibilities for funders to explore, to come to Malawi and see if they can do anything there.
And I can attest to that. Having been in Malawi many times, It's not hard to get around. It's very straightforward. Talk to us about your teacher training program. I know you've got one of the biggest in the country.
Yes, so further to my story, if you remember, a teacher spotted me when I was in grade 9, and I believe there is some substance in that. So because of that, later on in our growth stages, we added teacher training. So why did we start teacher training? We did this because many of the teachers are not fully supported by the government for the sheer fact that there isn't enough resources to train them. So what we do is that we partner with the Ministry of Education. We walk into a cluster of schools. We try to analyze and understand the gaps that teachers have. Then we go back and we build content. Together with the Ministry of Education, we go back and deliver that content. Now, I know already many funders or other people, they're already saying, well, teacher training does not work. Yes, just teacher training that fits everybody doesn't. But our program is really different in a sense that after we deliver the material, then we have put in place specific features in the program where teachers start to create communities of practice. So we have peer learning groups that are attached to a mentor teacher who is a government teacher residing in that community. So with that, it becomes an organic community of teachers who learn from each other, who supervise each other, who encourage each other. And what we have seen is we have been registering a lot of success. When a district has our program, between 2 to 4 years, it starts to rise up in the performance ladder across the country. I'll give you an example. Zomba Rural, we found it on position 10 out of 34 education districts. Since we started working with them, they really rose up to position 2. Blantyre Rural Education District, it was the 34th one for consecutive years. 2-3 years into our programming, it started moving to 27. As we speak, last year, they moved to position, I think they were in top 10 last year, if not this year. So Blantyre Urban, we found it on position 28. As we speak, they are in the teens. So the reason we say our teacher programming works is not just teacher training, but is that special source where teachers are now making it a practice to learn from each other. And our teacher mentors support that by supervising and mentoring. I think that sets it apart from many other teacher training programs that just deploy content and hope that the teachers are going to use it.
And how many teachers have you trained?
So right now we've trained 5,308 teachers.
That's huge. And across how many schools?
This is across 242 primary schools in 6 education districts.
Oh, wow, that's impressive. And as you said, the schools are improving in their ranking, which means that the students are performing better because that's what improves the school ranking?
Yes, that's very true.
You've done a great job. And what's growth for Rays of Hope? And currently, does this growth seem authentic to you or is it funder driven?
So this growth sounds very, very authentic to me. And maybe let me address what is growth for us. So for us, we want this program to hit 8,000 teachers from 5,000. And what that means is that we are going to reach 700,000 students in doing this. And what we are hoping is that slowly these education districts are rising up the ladder, going up, and then that is going to give us enough evidence to go back to the government and basically say, hey, this is how we have modeled the teacher training. We may need you to actually take it up and start running it. Our goal really is to work us out of a job. We want later on Rays of Hope not do teacher training anymore. We want the government to have this as part of their institution.
Does the government have the capacity to carry on with that work?
I think it does, because our program is very cheap. We spend less than $5 per student in teacher training. So this is something that the government can easily take on board, looking at the dividends that is actually giving them. Sure.
And how easy is it to engage your government in Malawi?
For us, because we have slowly become a thought leader in teacher education and tutoring kids, so they can listen to us. And it has been fairly easy for us to engage with especially the district education people from the Ministry of Education. And I would say in that respect, it is not as hard to work with the government. By the way, last month, the whole director of the Department of Teacher Education and Development came to our program when we had a teacher conference.
Awesome.
Yeah, and he was superly impressed, and he said, well, we can learn so much from you at the national level. So I would say from our perspective, the government really love what we're doing, and they listen to you if you have something good going on. Sure.
Oh, wow, that's good. Mm-hmm. And I know that, you initially struggled to find funders, but you've now got a good pool of funders supporting you. Mm-hmm. What changed?
First of all, I think exposure. That's the first thing. I was able to get into the spaces. Trust me, getting into spaces can be an issue of justice in itself. And I thank partners like Partners for Equity, the Sigo Family Foundation, Imago Day, that have really invested in making leaders like myself to be in spaces where other funders can be found. That's the first. Second, a program that has impact would not struggle to invite people to invest in it. And that's what we've seen. Because our programs are very impactful, funders really come. I can't tell you how many times funders would call me and be like, hey, we've seen this in your program, can we partner? Just last week, we closed a grant with a partner in South Africa. We didn't even apply for it.
Wow,
they heard that
news.
We are doing something really good. They came and saw the program in motion. We didn't do any application. They just said, well, we are going to partner with you. And I strongly believe a program that has impact is going to invite people to invest in it. And I think thirdly is because of the work that people like you do. You champion our work, you broadcast our work, and other people know about us. You do introductory emails and all that. For me, I think that's a game changer because I would not reach out to those people. Fourthly, it's an issue of trust. I think what I've learned over the past years since leading Rays of Hope for 14 years now is having systems in place. Systems, they just ignite trust. And funders would want people that can be trusted. And we have been very faithful in using those resources. So all these factors to put together, I think that's why we have managed to grow our portfolio and be doing the work that we're doing. Sure.
Of course, this is funding with trust. So I'm going to pick up your point on trust. You said funders want people that can be trusted. Mm-hmm. What about grantees wanting funders that can be trusted? How has that gone for you?
Wow, that's a very interesting question. Not easy. So funders that can be trusted. I will tell you this. A lot of funders that do unrestricted funding, in my opinion, they are the ones that can be trusted a little easily. than funders that are very restricted. I'm not going to mention names because I have worked with several of them. Trust me, the quarterly reporting, no, the monthly reporting, the quarterly reporting, the annual reporting, all that, it's a lot of work. And I appreciate a lot of funders who, first of all, they give you multi-year funding. Second of all, they maybe require you to do a report once in a year. I mean, there will be catch-ups throughout the year, but the one that you can spend time and do a proper report is once. Funders who are not so much invested in just the system and what you do, but also they take time to understand the leader. They take time to relate with the person who is leading. It just brings a whole new vibe in how you can do business. So for me, I would say restricted funders, somewhat very transactional many times, but those ones that are not restricted are pretty relational and you can easily trust.
Willie, I love the fact that you've clearly outlined what most grantees would want from their funders. Thank you so much for sharing more about your work, what you do, and what you have achieved. It's truly inspiring. Thank you, Willie, and enjoy the rest of the conference.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me here. This was really fun.
I really enjoyed catching up with Willie, and I loved that one teacher recognized his potential and helped him transform his academic performance, turning him into a top student. You've been listening to Funding with Trust, and I hope it's left you feeling inspired. Tune in for our next episode, and don't forget to send me your feedback by emailing hello@fundingwithtrust.org. I'm Eva Mala, and catch you next time.